show this.
I think we need some company.
All right, everybody, welcome. Time is now just after 6:30, so we'll go ahead and kick this off. This is being recorded. It's not streamed live right now because of the way the things are set up, but it is being recorded, and I do hope we have this posted to the town's website very shortly tomorrow or soon after. Welcome to the public information session for Webster Community Power, and let's just kick this off here. So I'll start by briefly introducing a few of us and say thank you to the very many people who have been involved, but I'll only introduce a couple people who are likely to speak this evening. I will start with, from the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire, aka CPCNH, whom Webster Community Power has worked with and chosen as the expert partners to implement this, CEO Brian Callahan. He will be presenting and able to assist in answering further questions about the process and the coalition. From our local energy committee, Chair Martin Bender. He has been a part of this and a driver of this from the beginning, of staying informed on the new proposed legislation back in 2019 that made the 20-plus-year-old RSAs make sense to work with. He is also Webster's primary member representative to CPCNH. I am David Hemingway, Chair of the Webster Select Board and voted member of the Board of Directors of CPCNH. Once CPCNH was decided on to be Webster's partner in this, I was honored to join their board as a freedom-loving New Hampshire representative, to be able to voice the interests of a small, monetarily conservative town, and to make sure things like no fees and no penalties choices would always continue. Next, before we jump into Brian's presentation, I'll give a very brief version of the very long history on how we got here. Back when the utility monopoly was broken up and electric supply was separated from distribution, the concept of people banding together to implement their own supply was included in those original RSAs. Third-party suppliers have now existed for a long time, but one had to be careful to make sure they were in a good contractual situation instead of one with many gotchas. There have been attempts at community power in the past within individual municipalities, but they were unable to reach the scale required to stay competitive. Today, however, this is very different. Thanks to the updates to the RSAs, the scale needed is now not only possible, but overwhelmingly advantageous. As a result, Webster has gone through numerous meetings, 4 public hearings, multiple outreaches such as at Old Home Day, and discussions at town meeting to approve Webster Community Power. In banding together with all the other CPCNH member municipalities, we are already over 30% of New Hampshire's population represented, and larger than some of the utilities for electric supply today. This is why Webster Community Power is excited to take over the default power option, where folks have made no existing choice on their electric source to save everybody money. This gives you 4 new options to choose from for your electric supply, while retaining your ability to make a choice from third-party providers or the existing utility power you have at their current more expensive rates. The mailers you've received will show you both the rate details and that process, and those will come in the following presentation as well. With that said, I'd like to thank you all again for coming and being here, and invite CEO Callahan to present to you all. There will be a Q&A at the end of the presentation to answer all of your questions if the presentation has not or has sparked new questions. With that said, I am going to disappear behind the screen. I intended to be sitting here, but technical issues, so I'll be hitting the next button in the back. I will be out after when the Q&A comes. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. How's this sound? Good. Good? Not too loud? Okay. So my name's Brian. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll stop the presentation and make sure it gets answered. Because this is a public info session, which is really a Q&A session. So it's about helping explain what community power is. And if you got questions about it, ask me. When Dave gets moving on that, I'll go through a few slides. There's not too many here, and they're meant to kind of put the high level of what community power is and what it means in Webster. But I imagine there might be some specific questions for folks that have specific questions, so I'd like to hear those. So how does community power work? We help find where your electricity comes from. We are the supplier that will help move energy along those lines. The delivery section still belongs to Eversource or Unitil. How many folks are on Unitil here? Most everyone, and then Eversource, everyone else? Okay. So the distribution company, the distribution utility is exactly that. It's a distribution utility. It's focused on the distribution, keeping the lines and the poles up in the air so supply, which is what we're pulling together, can go through them efficiently. They always want to keep those going. So the distribution utility will always be focused on doing that. They're not really a supply company. They're a default service company. That means if nobody selects to do anything, they will go ahead and make sure that energy comes to you. So what Webster's decided to do is create an option so that we can deliver default service rather than Unitil or Eversource, depending on which service territory you're in. Everyone should have got a notice. I think I saw a notice earlier. Okay. Hopefully that notice helped explain some questions, but I imagine it sparked some as well. And hopefully that's why you're here to get those answered. Everyone has an option. They can do today. At today's point, he talked about a few different things that you can do, but everyone will be enrolled into Webster Community Power unless you're for two different instances. So if you've made a choice to go with a competitive supplier, I've talked to a couple folks already that have made that choice, so you might be in a contract, right? A multi-year contract. You will not be enrolled if you've been identified, and most everyone will be identified that way. The other kind of class of customers that will not be enrolled would be net metering customers. And the reason for that, I'll get into a little bit later, but the utility will identify you as a net metering customer, and you will not be automatically enrolled. We have asked folks, though, that are net meter, because there has been some instances where those folks have actually been enrolled inadvertently. We'd like the folks that are net meter to give us a call, just verify that they're on that list and not be enrolled. So you have until February 26th to opt out. Say you don't want to go with Webster Community Power, you can go ahead and opt out and stay on the default service provider, which would be Unitil or Eversource. The rates will start on, oops, we can go back one more day, thanks. The rates will start in February. Our new rates will start in February for the other communities that are enrolled. Webster will be, starting in March, beginning of March. So what happens then is both Eversource and Unitil don't do proration. So what will happen is the rate will change, you'll get enrolled, and then whenever your meter is read by the utility, that's when sparks the changeover. So you'll finish out, you might actually go through March, 5th or 10th or something like that. It depends when your meter's read, but the next meter read will be Webster Community Power. I think I have a slide. Let's stay on this one for a second, if you don't mind, Dave. I don't know if I have a slide. No, it doesn't look like I have a slide of the bill. I saw a bill earlier, though. On your bill, you'll see that they're unbundled. It's an unbundled bill. You'll see there's a lot of lines on that bill. Everyone's familiar with that. There's one line that's supplier. And in that supplier section, it's going to read Webster Community Power, or Webster Community P, if they can't stick enough letters in there. Something like that. I haven't seen what the bill exactly looks like, but it will say now Webster in there. So you'll know you're on that rate then. All the other lines will stay the same. The distribution, all those distribution rates will stay the same. The transmission cost will stay the same. Those are all dealt with the utility. It's fault service utility. The supplier will change though. And we talked a little about select customer groups. That's the competitive suppliers, those that have done a contract. And net metering folks really want you to reach out to us, but you should not be enrolled. The instances I was talking about earlier, the utilities worked really hard to stop that from happening. You guys aren't the first community to come on to community power, so you let the other communities figure out all the issues. So that's good. You now can help reap that benefit. And you're always choose. This is a choice for folks. Everyone's opted in, but then you can always opt out if you'd like. All right, thanks, Dave. These are the rates. This should look familiar to your mailer. I'm going to work on the table and work to the right. It's relatively clear, but I want to work through it again. On the left-hand side, where it says renewable content, inside the circle is the amount of renewable content in that particular rate. If you look down to the blue one, that says 24.3 at the bottom, and that matches up with the 24.3% on Eversource and Unitil. So you can kind of look at those last three as comparative. Webster has chosen to take the blue one, Granite Basic, as the default. But this is about choice. Anybody here can go ahead and join and take a higher renewable content. So the 33 means you've added 9% more renewable content to your power, but you're going to pay 0.3 cents more if you want to do that. If you want to make sure that your power is half, 50% renewable, you'll pay a whole penny and a half. 1.3 cents higher than that Granite Basic rate, and so on. The 100% renewable one means you're getting 100% renewable power. Anybody have an electric mower?
Oh, no, battery, sorry.
Yeah, the same idea,
Yeah,
battery mower.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to do that one, you can say that the grass is growing from the rain and the sun, and it's also getting cut by the rain and the sun. And the rates are this third column in. This estimated cost, though, when you see that estimated cost line, that's only the supplier piece on that bill. That doesn't have anything to do with the distribution side or the transmission part in that bill. So when you look at that number, let's say with the blue, and it says $53 a month, that's for someone using 650 kilowatt hours. The reason 650 kilowatt hours was chosen is because it's an average. Everyone uses a different amount. In the winter, we use more. This is 650 kilowatt hours is an average throughout a whole year, like your average New Hampshire house. Nobody here probably has an average New Hampshire house, right? I know I don't. Some higher, some lower. So when you look at that, though, the $53 a month, usually that's about half your bill. So I want to make sure that everyone's clear on that one. This is not saying your whole bill is going to be $53. It's just going to be that supply portion. As far as electricity choices, we have a website if you wanted to elect one of these higher renewable content products. You can go to the website. It's actually Webster's website. It's your own community power website, and you go in there and you put in your account number and you can select a different product. And you can opt out. You can also opt out of that website. If you don't want to use the computer, you can call us at that phone number and do the same thing. But if you call on the phone number, make sure you have a bill handy, because they'll ask questions about who you are, and having an account number makes things less frustrating because you can actually get your answers done on that phone call. So have a bill with you. If you want to opt out, you're always can go with either the utility or a competitive supplier. everyone gets mailers, right, from competitive suppliers. Oh, question?
Quick question, account number, the account number of our current Unitil Eversource?
Won't
or is it-
change.
Okay, I
Yep.
just want to make sure.
That's how we can identify it.
Yep.
Any questions on this? Oh, this came up earlier. At the top line, it says February 1 through July 31. It looks like in your mailers, it doesn't say February 1. And it probably should have. And it was left off, I'm not sure why, but you're not starting until March. So it'll be the rate that you will start on. It only goes through July 31st because we switched rates with all the other utilities in August. So that rate will change in August. So we're a little bit different. We have, we manage our own portfolio. So we are on the phone trying to find good deals to make sure we can keep costs down. Yeah. The graph on the right, this just, I don't know, can everybody see that okay? I feel like we should put some markers on there to make it a little bit more clear. It's kind of busy. But the point of it is, for the last 3 rate periods, we've been successful in keeping our rates lower than the 3 utilities. And the utilities that most folks have in here are going to be Unitil and Eversource. Our rates have been lower than those, both those companies, for 3 times, including this last period. Our rates are dropping 26%, but you can see, starting in February on that graph there, everybody's rates are dropping. Market costs are dropping. That's why that's happening. There's a question.
So you said that for the last 3 cycles, you guys have been lower than Unitil and Eversource. Say during a cycle, you are more than Eversource or Unitil. Do we default to them, or do we stay with you?
Not this first time around. You would be with us. If you wanted to opt out, you could then opt out to get onto that utility. So the way it was set up was on the initial launch for your community, you would not launch unless the rate was lower than what you were being offered by your default utility. That does not carry through subsequent rate adjustments. So, but you can always just pick up the phone and opt out. There's no penalty. You'll go right to the next billing cycle. You move to the next, you move to the next, you move to whatever the choice was that you made. Because you could also just call up and do a competitive supplier too. So no, you'll stay on this rate, or you'll stay on this Webster. If it's a higher rate, then you would want to opt out and go to the utility. But we're community driven. We're driven by folks like you guys. So, Dave's on the board. Our focus is to try to keep costs as low as possible. We can't guarantee, I'd love to say we could guarantee that. We're flexible. We're going to do what we can to keep it low. But it's not a guarantee. Any questions about that last slide at all?
You mentioned community reserve funds. Does each community have a reserve fund?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We are a nonprofit. Everything that we collect through rates is going to be funneled in to pay costs. Whenever our costs are lower than our overall revenues that are coming in, we shove that differential into something we call joint reserves. Right? Those joint reserves, and we have a target that the company has put together of 120 days of operating on the reserve level. All that means is we're trying in the next, the target is in 3 years. We're trying to build up our balance sheet. We're new. We don't have a balance sheet really much to speak of. We're getting one, but we're working on it. We're trying to get to 120 days. When we get to 120 days, we expect that our financing costs, in order to bring lower cost power, will go down. So we can take that benefit and shove it back into our rates to keep costs lower. Our whole focus is to try to be as efficient as we can in delivering power. But to the question about the reserve fund, so you've got, most of that revenue goes into pay for the supply that's going on those lines. Whatever's left over is put into a reserve fund. Webster's, whatever kilowatt hours Webster purchases, so your homes, that is tallied up, and you will have that portion of kind of equity in the company. And the reason that's important is in our bylaws, it's right there. But if Webster was ever to leave the coalition and say, we're done, we don't want to do this anymore, that amount of reserve has been put there by the residents of Webster. So you can take that with you. And we're supposed to keep calculating that for the rest of the time. So that's reserve. So think about it as it's kind of like equity to the company. But we're trying to get it so that we can actually reduce our overall costs. Does that answer that question?
It does.
Thanks, Dave. Any commercial customers here? No? Okay. For those, can we go back one more? I'm sure everyone knows business owners.
In regards to commercial customers, would you recognize the Army Corps of Engineers as a commercial customer?
Probably. I'm not sure what rate they're on. They'd have to be a large user. I don't know if they would
They do
be.
in fact have the hydro dam
Huh? I don't know.
under significant
There's a,
impact in our town, so I would like to know that.
I can look it up. I don't know off the,
Thank you.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
one other quick question. Is Webster Elementary considered a commercial customer?
I don't think so, but I could check that.
Thank
Do you know, Dave?
The school district, I'm sorry, I don't have the mic. If you have a problem, please let me know and I'll grab one. The school district does a bid for a period of time for the entire district altogether for both their electric and their other energy supplies, for example, oil and gas. So those things are individually bidded out like a large customer, like a large commercial entity. However, that is done at a district level, not at the Webster Elementary School level.
So subsequently, would that be credited to Pennacook versus Webster?
It would not be credited either way, because when you're dealing with a large customer of that nature, that is a separate set of calculations and
So
financing.
Webster does not benefit from that?
In what manner?
Does Webster benefit from that?
We would certainly benefit by having, if they were able to get lower rates by going through the community power choices, which would not be specific to Webster or Pennacook or others. If they were able to benefit from the better rates, then all of the taxpayers would benefit because they would have less in their budget sheet.
Yeah.
So Webster will in fact be benefiting, recognizing, I guess where I'm looking at this is the elementary school as a corporation, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers as a corporation, nonprofit or not. In saying that, those are significant commercial customers in our domicile. So help me to understand the benefit for
Sure.
the Webster residents.
So I don't actually know the electric use of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Does anyone?
But I'm sure we could ask them. However, if they were doing it, they are in Webster with all of their electric supply, so they would get it from Webster Community Power, and we would absolutely benefit. We wouldn't benefit by lower tax rates because of them not having as much budget, because we don't pay their taxes directly in town. That's more of a federal program. However, for something like the school system, since they bid as an entire school system, not as Webster Elementary, that wouldn't go directly into the advantage of Webster for, quote, Webster Community Power only. It would, however, go into the joint reserves for the entire coalition, which does still benefit Webster.
Fractionally?
And, yes.
Fractionally?
Yes,
We are in a mere
And would
fraction.
also benefit because there would be lower tax rates because of lower expenditures out of the school system.
Would that be equally distributed amongst the district? Or would Webster benefit, recognizing that I'm sure that not all communities are looking at some sort of a development like this?
I believe actually all of the school district is looking at it, though I don't believe they will all be enrolled in it at the start.
So subsequently, they have not signed
To
on to it?
also go further on that point, this is for specific commercial rates, and this is if you want to sign up with a commercial rate, which is very different from what the school system does, which is to have a bid process that locks in a rate for a year. That program we do not yet offer as CPCNH. Hopefully in the coming year, when they do come out to bid, that will be an option, but it's not currently.
Yeah, we are
Although
working on it.
subsequently, that will be reflected within our taxpayer bill, correct?
If they get a lower rate, then it would be a reduction in your school tax portion of your tax bill.
And if not?
And if not, they will continue to go with whoever their lowest bidder is. And that's how they've been working for years.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be up to the SAU. Well, I wanted to show this just because there's a lot of rates. There's all kinds of different rates out there. This one just says for commercial folks, they actually have monthly variances. And for those that are in Eversource, there's a pretty significant benefit for Webster Community Power on these rates. So why Webster Community Power? What are the long-term benefits? We've talked about rates. Try to stay competitive. We are community-driven. It's a nonprofit. We're just trying to keep the cost down as low as possible. Clean energy options. You saw that you have a bunch of different options that you could increase the amount of renewable content in your particular, in your rate, if you wanted to do that. But the only rate that you're supposed to meet, you need to get into is the one that is mandated by the state law, which is there is a renewable portfolio standard that we need to follow. That's that bottom one, the blue one. Investing in community. Our hope is to start helping communities build renewable energy facilities if they want to, or even coming up with additional energy efficiency projects in their communities, if that's what they want to focus on, or if they want to do something around electric infrastructure, like EV chargers or
Hydro.
something of that nature, maybe hydro.
Significant.
Hard to build new hydro.
Oh, it's already built?
It's already built, yeah.
We're a significant part of New Hampshire.
And then local control, that's the best part. We've got, I wish we had a good picture on here where we show basically what the board looks like. It's a bunch of people hanging around in circular tables having conversations about what they want to do in their communities. So we're having in April, we're having our member meeting. All that's open to the public. Anybody can come. Anybody can come to any board meeting. But that's where those decisions are made to guide the organization forward. In those communities, we're 55 communities strong now, serving 55 members, serving 60 communities is what the representation is. That's almost 30, it's just about 30% of New Hampshire has joined CPCNH.
Just curious, the solar panels over here, does that affect anything?
That would be for this town facility. They connect to the town facility. So that facility would be net metered.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. There are two things that are happening in town that are energy related that have nothing to do with CPCNH. So I'll separate those out for you. One is the set of solar arrays that's across the street. That is fully paid for at this point and is offsetting the electricity that the town uses for the municipal buildings. So that is being seen as a lower tax rate for you and a revenue on the revenue side. The second that you may have heard of is the Deer Meadow Solar Project, which is the 75 megawatt large solar installation that is to come through the joint lands of the Hopkinton and Webster transfer station, as well as several private owners that have made agreements down along that road. That is still in process. We hope to have more information from it soon. They had been held up a lot on the interconnection agreements for the line that they were going to be using. I've heard that that is just about sorted out now, so we'll find out hopefully soon more on that. But they did opt to make an amendment and then a renewal at an exponential increased rate to maintain their lease option for the land at the joint transfer station. So we are seeing revenue from that, even though nothing is actually showing up for us yet. But those are two separate projects that are not anything to do with community power or your direct power bill. If you have questions on either of those, I am more than happy to answer them after this is all done.
Thank you.
Question?
So your rate right now goes like, you have it negotiated for like a 6-month period?
Yeah.
Is that, like, is it always gonna be like a 6-month rotation, or will that vary?
So right now, we're trying to do the same periods that the other utilities are using, which those are 6-month periods. So for most residential folks, yes, each 6 months. What we are trying to do, though, is we recognize municipals would like to have something a little bit more secure for budgeting purposes when they pull their town budget together, and they want an annual rate based on a fiscal year. So come August, my hope is to get an annual rate in place so town governments can go ahead and select that for a year to make sure that their budgets they've got more assurances on their budgets. I don't know, there's questions as to whether or not we would open that up for any business, any residential member, any small business. Those are questions that are not answered yet. But I do know the primary focus is on, well, it's a municipal kind of run organization, so they're thinking about their own town budget. So that, we're working to get that. I don't know if it's gonna be a 12-month rate or like a 16 or 18-month rate, but we're looking for a longer term one. It won't be a 3-year rate though, which is what you usually hear when you see a competitive supplier. A lot of folks will want to get you into a 3-year rate. That's not what we're looking to do. Question?
On the back of the card here, you've got 3 different colors for 3 different times that the communities can join. Is the rate in those 3 different colors all the same?
They are joining at different times, so the rate changes. So those in green that you see on the left-hand side, there you go, perfect.
But for the same time, is the rate the same in all those?
Yes.
Those
Okay, I
statewide
got
rates?
you. I'm sorry. Yep, it's through all, so when we change rates in February, everybody that's taking power from us right now, which is the green, is on that same rate. Then the blue will come in, the darker blue, which is kind of hard to see, but it's in the middle. Folks come in March, they'll share in that same rate. And then when these folks come in June, they'll also be on that rate for about a month. And then we'll switch it in August, and folks that are in the red are planning on launching either in that period or it might be the next. It depends on how quickly they can go forward. But it's a good question. All the CPC&H member communities are on the same rate right now, regardless of the service territory you're in, regardless of the utility that you're in. Because there's differentials in savings, right, between different utilities. We have one rate. This shows, though, how, you see how can't really point to it, I don't. You see how it's kind of off color where it says county ready? So anybody in those communities can already launch, because actually in Cheshire, not in Merrimack yet, once, because they have to get their EAP, their electric aggregation plans approved. But what that means is anybody that's in that county can actually opt in. It's not town-specific. So there are county folks that are joining and trying to offer it to their residents. It makes it easier for a town within that county to join, because they join into the county, have the county do the work for it. So it's a different model, but it results in the same thing. But right now, we represent just
Excuse
about
me?
30% of the state.
Could you just clarify as to what you just said, whereas it results in the same thing?
If the idea is to get a community power rate or become part of the community power movement, you can do it through a county model or through a town model or a city model.
Thank you.
That's the same, that's what I meant.
But it's not individual?
Individual. Oh, a resident in those counties, that's what's different, is if you lived in one of those, whatever color that is, off yellow, you could actually call up and be part of CPC&A to get one of the rates that you're looking for. The town wouldn't have had to go and do it themselves because they're already in that county. Okay, I think we have covered this. But I do want to highlight the net metered one. Is that if you are net metering, we would like you to call us. But the utilities are getting better at identifying everybody. And the reason that part's important is when we get ready to launch everybody in a community, we basically get a big spreadsheet, and there's a column that says net metered. And in that net metered column, if you're net metered, there'll be an X. If they don't put the X there, we won't know that you're net metered, because it's a lot of people. So everyone would be enrolled. So they're getting better at putting that X in there, but sometimes that hasn't happened, and we've enrolled.
Net metering is the solar question.
Yeah, so if you've got PV panels, most folks, you can do wind, you can do hydro behind the house too, but most folks it would be with PV panels. So if you have PV panels now, sometimes you'll be producing more energy than you use, and that exports into the system. We're not able to see that export because the utilities haven't been able to figure out how to show us what that export value is. It would be like a negative number, right? You're not pulling energy in anymore, you're pushing it out, so it turns the meter backwards. The utilities turn that to a zero for us. So if you were exporting, that energy has a lot of value. You want to get your credit for it because you're helping literally serve your neighbors. That electricity is going to flow like water. It's going to flow into the next place it wants to go. And there's value there. But if we see a zero, we have no way to credit you. So they got to get that fixed. They're working on it. We're helping them try to work on that. Once that gets solved, and then there's another layer to it. When that next layer gets solved, then we'll be able to do net metering. And we're hopeful that we'll get that done.
So could you by any chance elaborate on the net metering tariff
What the net
that was
metering?
mentioned in here?
Well, that is basically what so when you're net metering,
It's a tariff, it's actually a tariff.
yes, it's a tariff.
Yes.
There's rules
Yeah.
associated with net
Yes.
metering.
Could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yeah, in the tariff, there's a rate, it's actually the same rate in Eversource and Util's service territory, that when you use energy and you export energy, it's roughly the same thing, because it's netted at the end of the month. If you were, for the period of a month, to use less energy than you produced, you actually pushed energy in, you used negative energy because you sold it to folks, you would have a negative number on your bill, and you'd have a credit associated with that. And that credit could then offset the rest of your bill, the distribution side of it, the meter charge, all of that. We're not able to see that negative, so we can't apply that credit to your bill. That's what I mean about the net. That's what that references in the net metering tariff.
Right, and the other thing that I saw in this little pamphlet was, as you mentioned, that net metering customers are not eligible. They're not currently eligible. Do you anticipate a date as to when they're going to be eligible?
Yeah, and not eligible is not really a fair way to put it. Like, you could go ahead and sign up if you want, because there are,
But when will they benefit?
as soon as we can get the data.
Help me to understand, do you have an anticipated date?
Mm,
I know that
I
there are a
will-
significant amount of people that are so very working hard to give back to their community in their alternatives in regards to supplying back into the net metering and back into the system, that have done so many alternative things, be it solar, not hydro, because that's very controlled here in the state of New Hampshire. But in saying that, they've done alternatives and they've really tried to go ahead and credit themselves and their community. Do you anticipate any time as to when that's going to happen? From what I understand in this, it has not happened yet.
It hasn't.
Correct.
And the reason is, it's really technical. It's not
Yes,
that the
it is.
utilities they don't want to give us the information, they just don't know how to do it. Their systems aren't set up to do it. And the unfortunate part about that is when you don't have the information, we're not actually able to follow the tariff by crediting folks, because we don't have the information.
So are you saying you're in compliance
Oh, yes, we're
Oh.
in compliance.
in
Yeah.
of the tariff?
Yeah, but you can go, so, on the net metering, if you're a net metering customer, I'll give you an example of why you might want to enroll on it.
Thank you.
If you were a net metering customer, and you saw that the rate's much lower, right? So you do use energy still if you're a net metering customer. I was talking to somebody earlier today that they had roughly 100% of their bill to be offset by their net metering system. In that case, you wouldn't want to enroll, right? Because you're going to be putting 100% of the energy you use, you're going to be producing through your solar system. But if you've got a solar system that's probably meeting only 10% of your need or 20% of your need, and you're not exporting a lot, you might want to go ahead and roll because your cost might be lower because our rate is so much lower. But rather than anybody get surprised, we would love to have you call, and someone can actually help you walk through that math if you want to do that. Like, I really want to go ahead and enroll. I see that the rates are 24% lower than Unitil's. I want to have some of the savings for the energy that I'm using, not necessarily the lost credits. Because if you enroll with us, we just can't credit you. I mean, it's not that we don't want to, we just can't.
So there is no benefit as of now?
Well, there's benefit, we just can't apply the benefits to you. Because we don't have that, we don't
So
have
you
that.
cannot apply it, is that what I'm hearing?
So let me try to help clarify there just a little bit for you. With the net metered portion, when you send power back to the grid, we don't see that, so we can't credit you. And that's the problem and why we're not enrolling the net metered customers, obviously, because we don't want to harm the customer. The thing that I'll say about the tariff situation is that there is a open docket at the PUC, or the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission, specifically looking at the rates, the tariffs, the rules and regulations surrounding net metering. That is open right now. I believe they hope to have that at least in a framework within the next few months for what that's going to look like going forward. When they decide that, then it will be up to the utilities and CPC&H to enable the things that are required to follow that new structure. So you're looking at least a 6, 9, 12-month period before all of those changes would actually be enacted. But the PUC is the one that handles all of that and those regulatory pieces. And so we can get you the docket numbers if you want to read more on it, but that's where all of that gets handled.
So at this point in time, that cannot be guaranteed, am I correct?
What cannot be guaranteed?
The net metering benefit.
Net metering benefit will be seen by anybody that is net metered because they will not be enrolled into CPC&H. CPC&H cannot provide for the negative portion or the credits back to the person, which is why those folks should not, in general, join CPC&H at this time. hopefully within the next year or so, that might change. We are certainly working to make that change all the time, but we have no way to guarantee those times because it's not up to us.
Can you just help me as to how that's being facilitated?
How what's being facilitated?
How that net metering is going forward? You mentioned the 6 months anticipation and you're hoping that.
It's
How
going
is
through-
that in fact being facilitated?
It's being facilitated by the New Hampshire PUC, Public Utilities
Yes.
Commission.
Yes.
And they're the ones that are in charge of how that all gets handled, what the tariffs will be, what those rates will be, and how the utilities will interact with everybody else to make sure that can happen. That's all in the PUC dockets.
So at this point in time, no credits are being rendered.
They are because they're not CPCNH.
We are doing everything we can to solve that net
They are
metering.
outside of your nonprofit, am I correct?
Who's outside? Sorry.
They are outside of your nonprofit, am I correct? Thank you very much. No, this is a nonprofit.
Yes.
Very separate from PUC. Don't be confused.
Yeah. Question?
So if you have solar panels, you're net metering, but you're not prohibited from
No.
joining, but you're just saying it wouldn't be advantageous.
Right.
But I don't think our panels provide 100%. We've never gotten a negative bill.
Oh, then you might want to join.
Yeah,
But call.
yeah, I
Give
will.
us a
So if I
call.
call and walk through what our, because in the summer, the bill is minuscule, but we're still getting a bill in the winter.
You don't
Oh,
have-
well, that might be a little bit different, because remember, the supply side is, if you're not net metering, the supply side is usually about half your bill.
Yeah.
If you probably are getting credits in the summer, you said your bill goes down pretty significantly.
Yes.
It's likely those credits are being applied to the distribution side of the bill
Mhm.
and lowering that too.
Yeah,
So I would recommend, if you have some bills handy, give us a call,
all right.
and we can help walk you through that.
Whether or not we should.
Yeah, in general though, it's best to start off, you can always opt in.
Yeah,
You can always opt in later, and you shouldn't be enrolled on that. But if you want to do it, give us a call, we can walk through it for you.
thank you.
Yeah, it's not a prohibitive thing, it's just we don't want anybody to lose out on the
Yeah.
credits from that.
So we, like how we gotta find.
We get our power through a different agency. And I talked to them today, when I looked at your rates here, it was like 6.2, 6.5, to see if they could lower mine, and they wouldn't.
Monitor.
So I would like to opt out of
So
that,
it would just be.
and then I
It's
could
Unitil.
contact you and sign up for this. Is that correct? Is that the step 1, 2, 3 that I would do?
Yes, you would have to call up that provider,
Right.
because it's possibly you have a contract.
No, I
Oh,
don't. I mean,
okay.
there's no penalty.
Okay, yeah, you can opt out there and opt in, but you would not be automatically enrolled because you have that contract.
So first I need to opt out and then go to probably Eversource until they,
So basically, that's worth your while.
for probably a month and then opt in or whatever.
Yep, you could actually opt in right away. You could opt out and then opt in on the website. You can probably, you might get stuck with another bill with Eversource and then move over to us. It doesn't happen right away.
Right.
But you mentioned 6 cents, so I want to make sure you're looking at the right.
Well, down here it says 8.3, 6.5, 6.2.
Okay, those would be your, those are the commercial rates.
Those are
The residential, those are the first.
The residential rate is on the start and it's 8.1 cents. So that's what you would want to use
So the
for any
residential
of
is
your
the
calculations.
So.
Okay.
That's the one you want to focus on.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a third party with no penalties. So if I opt in with you guys, does that automatically cancel that, or do I have to have the 2 steps where I cancel and opt in?
I believe you need to opt out and opt in, but I'm not positive on that. I should know the answer to that, actually.
Usually the new provider cancels you.
You should just opt right in. It should just work that way.
I'll write in, okay.
You're
All
saving
right, thank
5
you.
cents on everything.
Yeah, I did, I went to the website and it asked you to opt in
Right.
from a third supplier, so I just did it online,
Yeah.
and they're gonna handle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That question came up the other day, And that was kind of, that was decided that was, I mean, you're making the choice,
Right.
you know, because if you're opting in, then you obviously are opting out of the other one. Why force you to do it twice? But I can't tell you that I don't know that for a fact. It should work that way. Opting in should
You
get you.
said they're gonna review it and get back to you.
Yeah,
You have to put in your Unitil account number and all that.
yeah.
And they know who you are.
And then the third party would be identified.
Right.
That you've been dropped.
Right.
But I would caution folks on that, is to make sure that there's not a penalty associated with that.
I don't have a penalty.
Oftentimes there are.
Could I just note that the Department of Energy has a consumer services team. If you go to their website and give them a call, they can help you with competitive supplier questions.
Well, thanks for that. Any other questions before we jump into this?
Which is our last slide.
It's our last slide, and I think we've covered most of all this already. Okay, most everybody will be automatically enrolled. Will become the new default electricity supplier for the town. It's voluntary, you can opt out if you'd like. This one is important, because I've actually heard this before. Winter happens, power goes out. It's not gonna impact how quickly Eversource or Unitil gets to your house to make sure that the power's back, or your street. Their role is to keep the distribution system tip-top shape. That's what they focus on. When you look at a utility, I used to work at the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative. 240 people there. 200 of them were focused, 220 of them were focused on keeping the lines up. The other 20 were focused on the default part. Their focus is keeping those lines good. So you're still their customer. You're still their distribution customer, even though that you're now Webster Community Power for default, for service, for supply. If you're on a third-party supplier, you'll stay on a third-party supplier unless you take an action to get off that third-party supplier. All the revenue that is coming in through rates. There's no new taxes or anything that is inside your town budget. It's all funded through rates. That's what we got for an overview of Webster Community Power. This is where you can get additional questions answered. Our website is pretty good. There's a lot of info on there. That's the communitypowernh.gov or cpcnh.org. There's another one. Any other questions? I got all night if you want.
I like it.
Can you tell me your confidence level in Eversource?
Oh. I don't work for Eversource.
Confidence in what?
I guess, let's just ask a general question to begin with.
Like that they exist, or?
Best management practices, let's just focus on that.
I don't really have an opinion myself.
Okay. Let me just elaborate as to why I'm asking that question.
Okay.
Recognizing that in 2019, the state of New Hampshire, through their legislative process,
Thank you.
actually passed legislation in regards to opting in for written consent to put smart meters on each and every house. Okay? In saying that, anyone here with a pacemaker is at risk. Actually, I tried to voluntarily stop Eversource when they came to my property.
Oh, you mean
To put a smart meter on every building that had individual accounts at my residence and at my business. and they chose not to. Unfortunately, I had to call my local law enforcement in this town to witness that procedure of their defiance of the legislation. So notice they're breaking the law. So I guess the question is, here we are confidently, or people have proposed that they're confident in their best management practices, and yet they're a fraudulent entity, not even going by the New Hampshire state law. So how can we believe in them?
I would call the state with your complaints.
You're here advocating for them. You're here advocating for them.
For Eversource, no, I'm not advocating for Eversource, this is the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire.
Okay, our coalition tells me, as you sent this to me, Eversource is reiterated here numerous times.
They're a part of the bill, they're your distribution.
So I'll need that within my conflict.
I'd give them a call. I'd call the state, if you've got concerns. Call the Department of Energy.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Further questions, we should see us end the recording now, since everybody's here.
Call the Public Utilities Commission. Register a complaint.
How can we be